Welcome to the Imagination Factory. I'm Sara.
I'm Keith.
And today we are continuing on with some refined pencils for page one. We're getting really close on this one. It's exciting seeing the page come together, and we're going to continue working on it today, finishing up the last couple of panels for the stage.
Yeah. So I think one of the benefits of doing this in this way, having people watch, having Sara being able to give me input right away, gives me a different perspective than I would normally. And the other thing that I haven't talked about is when I'm working on a comic book page, usually I'm working on it, like, like in one straight shot, right? Like I'm usually doing it where it's like, okay, today I'm going to work on this rough pencil page and I'm going to finish it. And then I'm moving on to the next rough pencil page and I'm finishing that. Sometimes in the past, I've actually said I'm going to work on a whole page and finish it all the way to completion. It just depends. But in this very specific scenario where we've never done this, either one of us has done this before.
Mhm.
We're doing this on like a weekly basis. So something that I started working on last Thursday, and I haven't really looked at it, to be honest with you. I maybe looked at it after we stopped recording and just had some thoughts about things I might want to change. But
Mhm.
one of the things about like not having really looked at something for a week and then all of a sudden having a glance at it, you can see a lot of the things you're like, oh, okay, the head there, that's not quite right. It just having your eye rest or having your eye distance itself from something for a while allows for you to be more objective when you come back into it because you're very emotionally involved with the thing in the moment. You're like, oh my
Mhm.
God, this is the greatest thing I've ever drawn. I love what I'm doing. Or, I don't like this. This is just horrible. And then you get some distance from it and you're like, your emotions have generally, at least in my case, they've left. I can't remember why I didn't like it or I can't remember why I loved it. And now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, well, this doesn't look right. And you can go in and change it. And so, that's kind of what I'm doing right now. And I'm looking at it in a much more objective way. And I'm able to go and, have a different, I guess, a rest between sessions so that now I'm able to tackle things in a way where I can see it a little bit more clearly.
Well, and I think that at the heart of it is the good and bad of having space from a project. There's something to be said for momentum, right? When you start into something and you just want to get it done, whether it be, finishing the page for the comic book or writing a chapter, if you're doing that kind of a story, you're just like, it's pouring out of me. I just want to get it done. But sometimes that distance is good because you look back and you're like, oh, now that I've, left and done something else and come back, I have new eyes, fresh perspective. I can look at it a bit objectively because sometimes it is just that, that flow coming out of you and you just keep it going, not realizing that you might want to take a step back from certain aspects. So it is interesting when you kind of force yourself to work differently. You do find the pros and cons of that. And sometimes it's an unexpected pro where you're like, oh, I would never have thought this would have actually been a helpful thing. But it does actually give you, a bit of a clear perspective that you might not have had you just powered through the whole thing because you were on a roll.
Yeah. So let me ask in writing,
Mhm.
especially with commercial writing, where you are not necessarily the only person, uh, part of,
Yeah.
like there's a team and you have to keep on doing rewrites or changing things. Like, what is that like for you to how do you keep the momentum going for something and keep like the ability to make sure the thing that you started is the same thing that you end with, I guess. Like, so
Yeah.
it has the voice of it feels the same versus like if you've stepped away from it and you're like, I have new ideas and how I want to write this. And now it feels like disjointed.
Yeah. And you know what? That happens to me all the time because I get super into something and then I step away from it and then I come back to it and I'm like, I feel like a different person than the person that wrote the original thing. And am I in the same headspace? When it comes to something like a commercial, what sometimes can happen is new information gets added. So a lot of times I did a lot of, kid stuff, toy commercials, and there's a rhyming, there's a cadence, there's a melody, there's some kind of a certain energy. and then a new piece of information would get dumped on me. And I'm like, well, how am I supposed to weave that into this cadence, melody, energy? Because now it's like a wall of information that isn't exactly fun, right? That you have to
Mm.
now figure out how this can just wedge its way into something that had a great thing going for it. And that can be really tough. And sometimes it becomes like, you do a couple lines that are a bit more sing song, and then you have to deliver some straight dialogue and then get back into the beat in order to make it work. Or magically, sometimes it can shoehorn in properly. But I think that is actually a case where stepping away from it does help, because sometimes in that moment, you're like, ugh, this is never going to work. I hate it. I don't want to live here anymore. And in reality, you got to figure it out. And sometimes a distance does allow your brain to have that, aha, wait a second, I do know how to solve this problem. And it's similar to, when I'm writing a chapter and I walk away from it and I come back and I'll reread it. And it's almost like in my mind, I'm like, I don't know who wrote this, because it's
Mm.
not what I necessarily would have wanted to do now. So I'll go back and I'll rewrite a whole section of it, get myself back into it and continue going. But it's funny how sometimes, depending on the day, you're a different creative. And I know that that sounds weird, but if you're a creative person, you'll kind of get where I'm coming from with this, where depending on the mood, how you woke up, what you were doing before, what you're about to do after, your creative vision and the way that you look at something might be different than it was the last time you looked at it.
Well, people bring their emotional state into
Mm-hmm.
what they're doing, and you don't always know that that's the emotional state you're in. You may not be completely sensitive to the fact that you're feeling super sad for whatever
Yeah.
reason, and everything you're writing, you're like, oh my God, this is just, and so it kind of affect, maybe as a result of how you feel in that moment,
Yeah.
you're like, I want to make sure I don't want to imbue sadness into this. I want to make it feel joyful. And so you overdo it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
or or you're reading into something that somebody said to you because you're super like
Mhm.
hypersensitive in that moment, and so that's coloring the way that you're thinking about, oh, this person doesn't like this and I have to like accommodate that, and
Overcompensate. Yeah.
you overcompensate, and then you come back to it and it's no longer the case, and you're going, why did I write it this way? It feels kind of forced. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah,
Absolutely.
it is true that, um, you bring your emotions into what you create, and that can work for you, but it could also, it colors what you do. And
Yeah.
so being aware of that, going into something where you're like, I know how I'm feeling at the moment, just be aware that it could work for you or could work against you. And if you need time to step away from a project because of that, then it's okay to do it. Or to be like, I'm going to use this frustration I feel and get that page finished because I have been trying to get it out for the last week and nothing's worked, but my frustration is going to help me push it through, right? Whatever
Yeah.
helps you get through it.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned a really important point, which is sometimes the best thing you can do is not work on it, right? Like I'll sometimes decide what I'm going to work on based on my mood. Like if I've got a pile of a bunch of different things I need to do, I'm like, what what does current Sarah feel capable of doing right now? And sometimes it's maybe a different thing than I'd set out to start at, but I'll look at the screen and be like, I'm just not feeling that. I know if I do it, I'm going to end up having to redo it. So I'm going to switch gears and work on something different
Hmm.
and go back to it. And if you have the ability to do that, that's great, right? Like if you've got a few things in the pile, then you can pick the one that is best suited for what you're currently feeling like doing. Because sometimes it's hard to force creativity, right? Like it's hard to be like, must be creative in this way right now, which was always the hard part of having a like 9 to 5 desk job as a creative person, where it's like, that's not really how creativity works. You'd be like, okay, well, I've clocked in, must now be creative for 8 hours and then I'll go home. Sometimes it hits you at completely different times and you're like, I'm just in the mood right now to create something. And other times you'll just sit there and stare at the computer and be like, it is just not happening right now. And I know if I do it, it's just going to have to be redone because what's going to come out isn't the right vibe for what it needs to be.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so I just want to go back to the drawing real quickly.
Hmm.
Um, you can see I'm actually drawing through the box. So you see I'm drawing like the clock, and I'm actually drawing parts of the clock you can't see, that the where
Mm,
the box is holding it. The reason why you want to do that, and it's actually a good idea. You can actually see where the arms are being drawn to. I'm kind of like drawing through um uh places where you're not necessarily going to see uh in the panel. It's for you to make sure what you're drawing is somewhat accurate. That being said, if it looks better the way you drew it, and somebody wouldn't necessarily know that you're like the arm is a bit off, um, you can leave it. It's just always a good idea though to have an idea what it is that, especially if it's a new thing, like so the clock here, um, it's substantial shape that I want to make sure is in the box in its proper space, so that like for example, right now the base of it may be pushing against the side of the box a bit, but I think it's still accurate. Now, if I had drawn this through and was like, oh no, actually the base is going out of the box into the stomach, then I'd have to shift it over a little bit.
right.
If especially if there's something about it that doesn't look quite right. And then the other thing to think about is the composition of it. Like, how is it in conjunction with the door? Like, I actually want, there's a reason why I have the clock um, overlapping the door here, because there's a backstory with this clock
Hmm.
that connects with the door. And so I want it to be like a subliminal thing for the audience, like, oh, you may not know it now. And I'm giving it away now, but for those of you that are like, if you're reading this story for the first time and you don't know anything about like what we've done with this, uh, maybe in the future, if there's a story that does have the clock in it, you'll go, I think I remember that clock. Like it, and the clock is pointing to the door, right? It's a little Easter egg.
I love that. And I love that the clock is playing prominently in these, in this first page in these few panels, but it also feels completely appropriate to what's happening, right? Like moving in with a box, you got a clock in it. That seems accurate. But the more you dig into the backstory of the door, that clock is super significant. But in this moment, it's just somebody moving into their new apartment, right?
Yeah.
And it's hidden in plain sight in such a cool way that it's just in the box they're carrying. But once you know that, if you were to look back, you'd be like, oh wow, that clock was there, but it just seemed like an innocuous thing in a box when I first looked at the page. And I love that.
Yeah. So if you watch our other show, or if you're not aware, we have another show called Twitch Edition, which is Tuesday live at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we're on Twitch and YouTube. And it's a one-off usually, or we spend like a couple of weeks on either
Mhm.
sequential page or an illustration. Same concept though. I have no idea what it's going to be. Sarah gives me a prompt and we develop the world from there. And one of the things we were talking about on that show was that doing something that short form means that there's no prep. Like there's literally, it's just a lot of it's instinct, uh, skill,
Mhm.
experience, and putting something together on the spot that may or may not work. And it's a great exercise, I think, just to, um, develop your imagination. This is a lot more prepared. So because it's a lot more prepared, I'm able to actually plan the way that you can see, like the way that the light is. There's a window from the opposite side of the room, which is right here. And we
Mhm.
figured out that the light, when it hits at a certain time of day, is going to create like a little frame on the door. And it's created on that door in kind of like a little bit of an ominous way. When you have angles like that, it does it like, it makes it a little disconcerting to look at. And so because we've been able to plan this a lot more thoroughly than those Twitch shows, I
Mhm.
can think about like putting in these little Easter eggs that will pay off later down the line, right? That is one of the benefits of doing something where you're really planning every step of the way. Previous to the rough pencil stage, we did thumbnails, and those thumbnails, we weren't just doing one thumbnail for each page. We were doing multiple
Yes.
versions of it and going and again, watch those because it's really cool. Because Sarah was like, "Oh, try this and put this here," and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is the greatest input I've
Just
ever
take
had."
it. Yeah.
Right? Um, so
Well,
yeah,
and I think what's really cool too, back to that Twitch edition, is that the clock was born from there,
yeah,
right? Like that wasn't in our initial plan. This whole, the clock being the reason that the door can come into our world, was not part of the lore. It wasn't part of the backstory. And then in our Twitch edition, we started doing a story about a clock in a shop, and it turned into the fact that what if this clock was what unlocked the door, and then that clock kind of transposed itself into the door. So it's neat because they're completely separate activities. One is, as Keith mentioned, very off the cuff, like pure imagination, and this one is much more planned out. And yet they've managed to find ways to sort of cross pollinate, because some of the ideas are coming out of those live moments that we're then able to incorporate and just sort of make this an even richer story with some elements that wouldn't have been there otherwise.